Hi everyone, this is Attorney Tharpe at ST Law Office, and I am live to take your immigration related questions. So go ahead and drop your questions in the comments and I will happily answer your questions. You and your questions are my priority tonight. I always like to close out the night to you. I was on earlier and now I'm back as promised to end the night and take your questions. So go ahead and drop your questions. For those of you who don't know me, I am U.S. immigration attorney Sharifa Tharpe, and I help clients to get their green cards in the United States. So you can ask anything you want that's immigration related. If you want to learn more about me and what I do, you can go to the link in my bio. The contact information is there. My phone number is there as well as a contact form. Sometimes the phone is busy, and if it is busy, no worries. Just go and complete the very short contact form, and then we will get back to you on the next business day. There's always a receptionist available to answer the phone, but if it's after hours, then the receptionist takes your information, and then the scheduling coordinator will get back to you to schedule a consultation. So I usually come with a topic, and today I'm going to be talking about applying for U.S. citizenship online. So I did a video earlier about one way to make the U.S. citizenship application go a little faster, and it definitely goes a little faster when you file it online. And the reason it goes faster is because you do get your receipt and your application number almost instantaneously. So that's the advantage. So far, I am seeing a process of about 6 months, and I apply for most of my clients, unless my clients indicate that they don't want to do it online. All of my U.S. citizenship applications are done online. And it is a very simple process when it's done online. Simple, streamlined, and relatively painless. You get your receipt number. You can upload your evidence there. So if you'd like assistance with that, don't hesitate to give me a call. But before you apply, of course, you have to know whether you qualify for U.S. citizenship. Now, before I start talking, I just want to let you know that you can ask any question that you want. So drop your questions in the comments. It doesn't have to be related to what I'm talking about today. And feel free to interrupt me and put your questions in. I will stop talking to answer your questions. So I'm monitoring the comments, and as soon as your questions roll in, I will focus on your questions. So applying for U.S. citizenship, who qualifies? So the basic qualifications are that you need to be over 18, of good moral character. Usually one has good moral character when they, there's no criminal history that indicates that they lack good moral character. And keep in mind, not all criminal history will disqualify you from U.S. citizenship. But if you have been arrested or you have if you have been convicted, you want to definitely make sure that you you get legal advice about whether the type of charges that you have will affect your eligibility for citizenship. So So basically you're saying that if someone applied for citizenship through the mail, the process is longer. So what makes the process longer is that, so if you notice getting it in the mail, it's that there's a reason it's called snail mail. And when you submit your application by paper, it takes a week to be processed, a week or 2 weeks to be processed. And then it takes the USCIS office another 2 weeks to send your receipt number, to process it and send your receipt number. And then if you miss something and it gets rejected, that's another 3 weeks where it's sent back to you, and then you have to send it back to them. However, when you do it online, if it is being reviewed and you get your case number right after you submit it. And then furthermore, there are certain checklists. So when as you're going through the application, it actually indicates to you whether you're missing evidence, or you're missing addresses, or there's a mistake in the address. So there are different checks and balances in the online system that helps you to complete the application more smoothly. Once it's submitted through the online, you basically get your receipt number immediately. So that takes out about 4 weeks of going back and forth. So keep your questions coming. So let's see. I see. So how can you get a green card if you are over 21 in Daca and single? So DACA recipients for now, as the law is, DACA recipient would have to qualify for the green card through the means and ways that other individuals do. Excuse me, I'm just for example, a DACA recipient would have to apply for the green card through a spouse, but here you said you're single, so the other possibility is through an employer. Or if you faced other circumstances in your life, for example, if you've been the victim of a crime, if you've been the victim of trafficking, where you've been brought into the United States illegally or coerced to come to the United States, then these may lead to status as well. But it all depends on your particular circumstances. And while there are proposed laws right now that would definitely provide relief to DACA recipients, it hasn't passed yet. So as we're speaking right now, you would have to, have your circumstances evaluated to see if you qualify for, the green card or status as another person would. Feli, I'm living in Maine. I applied through mail from October 2020. How long is the process? So right now I'm seeing about a 6-month process. But keep in mind that's the minimum that I've seen, and so it could go from 6 months to 18 months, just depending on your circumstances, the office that will be handling your citizenship case. You can also go to uscis.gov, and you can look up your USCIS office in Maine. And you can get an idea of the length of time N400 forms take. Hi there, Gurpreet. It's nice to see you. Chocolate3185. It's nice to see you, and thanks for sharing the live. Trace Willie. I'm going through the online application at the NVC now, currently at the financing part. Okay, so I think when you're talking about the financing, I think that means the affidavit of support. So yes, so that is very important to get right, to avoid any kind of issues when you're at the embassy. Yes. So keep those questions coming. I'm talking about applying for U.S. citizenship through the online program, but you can ask any immigration related questions that you like. So how long does it take after? So pre-COVID, it was easy to predict. So afterwards, it would take about 6 weeks to get an interview notice. However, and that's after the National Visa Center has confirmed that they're satisfied with everything that you submitted. However, because of COVID and the catch-up process that they're doing right now, it's probably going to be a little longer. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to take a couple months for you to get that interview notice. So keep those questions coming. So who qualifies for U.S. citizenship? So in order to become a U.S. citizen, you first have to be a permanent resident, so a green card holder. And if you obtained your green card through a U.S. citizen spouse, so if you got your green card because your U.S. citizen spouse applied for your green card, then you can apply and you're still with your spouse. Then you could apply for the green card after you can start applying at 2 years and 9 months. However, keep in mind that at the interview, the officer is going to want to see evidence that you have been with your spouse for the 3 years. And then if you don't fall within that category, it's going to be 5 years. And then you can start applying for U.S. citizenship at 4 years and 9 months. So that's the first requirement. Then the other is that you're living in your current state of residence for at least 3 months. So if you just moved to another state, you'll have to make sure you wait for the 3 months to pass since you've moved there to apply for U.S. citizenship in the state. Have to be over 18. You have to show that you have good moral character. So usually this is not an issue unless there's something in your past that indicates otherwise. So for example, if you've had an arrest, if you've had, if you've had a history of alcoholism, delinquent child support, delinquent taxes, these can affect your good moral character finding. And so you would definitely want legal advice in cases like this, because you want to make sure you're prepared going in to even defend your honor or defend the fact if the officer tries to say you lack good moral character. So let's see. So come on, Ahmed. I think it's that's Komyan. I'm in NY. So I applied in July 2020. I got the fingerprints. I didn't get anything yet. My brother got it. I'm in New York. So yes, with the COVID happening and everything, there has been a backlog, and it depends on where you are. You can always check the case processing times. So for the N400 to get an idea of what the time range is. But the fact that your brother got it and you didn't get it it's not necessarily bad news. It just means that somehow you've been caught in the backlog. But make sure you make sure you keep up on your status and call the office to ensure that everything is going well and there's nothing additional that's needed from you before they proceed. Trace Willie, you're welcome. So keep those questions coming. So I talked about the requirements. Now another important yet overlooked requirement is the continuous presence. So the continuous residence and the physical presence in the United States. They do track that. So if you've been outside of the country for more than 6 months in a year, you definitely want to make sure you get legal advice so that it doesn't necessarily impact you. So the estimated they are giving me from 5 months. So 5 months, they usually give a range, so 5 months to a maximum range. But yes, you just have to hang tight and make sure that you don't need anything to send them anything additional. Sylvie Tape, can I apply for citizenship if I have back taxes? So that's a great question. Now, that is where I would definitely say get legal advice and make sure you get assistance to put your application together. But yes, it is possible, but you want to make sure that you show that you have complied with tax laws and you're working with the IRS to pay off those back taxes. So in cases where you do have back taxes, but you can show a current payment plan or a statement from the IRS showing that you're making payments, that could very well, save you from any issues or any denials because of delinquent taxes. So that is one solution. But since I don't know your situation, the information I'm giving you is very general, and you'll have to make sure you get personal legal advice to ensure that you put a good application together despite the back taxes. So Komian Ahmed, you're welcome and good luck. If you need any assistance, always feel free to give the office a call. Now, I want to let you know that I represent clients all over the country. I'm based in Boca Raton, Florida. So for those of you who are around the corner from me, you can schedule an in-person consultation, but I also offer consultations to individuals by phone and video, and I work with my clients all over the country to prepare their applications, because normally we as immigration attorneys, we work with USCIS offices all over the country, because there is a federal system, and so they're scattered around the country, and applications have to be filed across state lines. So we're very good, and I am very good and efficient at working with my clients across the country. So back to U.S. citizenship. So continuous residence and physical presence. Now you have to show that you've been continuously residing in the United States for the period of time, so in the last 5 years, that you have been continuously present in the United States. If you have been outside of the United States for more than 6 months, that could be a presumption that you've abandoned your permanent residence and could lead to a denial of your citizenship, and you'd have to prove that you indeed lived in the US, you were just outside of the country because of, specific justifiable reasons. But even if you're outside of the country, that you maintained your residence, continue to pay rent, continue to pay your bills, in order to show that you intended to have continuous residence, and you have to show physical presence in the US for at least half of the time that you have, half of the past 5 years, for example. So you have to keep that in mind. And my number one rule of thumb is that if you've been outside of the country for more than 6 months in a year, you want to get legal advice to make sure it doesn't negatively affect your application. Feli thank you for sharing my live. I appreciate it. Hi, Sexy Tommy One. It's nice to see you. So let us, once you determine that you qualify for U.S. citizenship, the next step would be to submit your N-400. And I am an avid supporter of the online system. That is how I apply for my clients' citizenship. And the application process tends to go smoother. It tends, so the initial part of the application goes faster. So when I say initial part, I mean the receipt notice. So as soon as you hit submit, you pay the fee, you get the receipt notice right away. So immediately you know your application number and you can start to check your status. When you're doing it by mail, it's by snail mail. So that whole process of just getting your application into the system takes about 4 to 6 weeks. So it's, the initial part of filing the application is longer. And as a result, it lengthens the processing time. So Chocolate 3185, how do you get your passport under your dad? You come here when you were 13. So if you derived U.S. citizenship from your father, you first of all you have to meet certain requirements. But if you do, then you would have to attach evidence that you were legally here in the United States. Your dad, for example, had custody of you, and you'd have to show evidence that of when your dad became naturalized, and if your dad became naturalized when you were 13 or before you were 18, you could very well already be a U.S. citizen, and you would have to basically submit those documents to get the passport. But I would want to, this is just general information I'm giving to you in order to advise you directly on how you can do this. If you can do this, I would want to schedule a consultation. State 1, thanks for sharing the live. Modongom 214, thanks for following me. So user 9038. If you need an affidavit of support, at what stage will USCIS request it? So when you are applying for adjustment of status, usually the affidavit of support is required along with the required forms. Chocolate 3185, you're welcome. So, but if you're doing it at the consular processing, meaning that you are being sponsored or you're sponsoring a relative who is in another country, then once the initial petition is approved, then it gets sent to the National Visa Center, and the National Visa Center usually handles the request and initial review of the affidavit of support to make sure that everything is included, it's filled out properly, and then they send it to the embassy for final review by the officer at the interview. So it's going to be at the National Visa Center. So great. Trace Willie, thanks for sharing my live. So keep those questions coming. These are all great questions. So continue to submit your questions. So once you submit your application, then the next step would be biometrics. Now, what I'm seeing lately is that if you've recently gone through the green card process, for example, or if you've gone through the immigration process recently, and now you're applying for U.S. citizenship, what I'm seeing is that they are actually using your old biometrics to, and I have a hunch it's to speed up the process, to improve the situation with the backlog. So they're using old biometrics records, fingerprints, to do the background check again. And so that tends to speed up the process as well, because they skip the fingerprinting because they already have it and jump straight to running the background check and then scheduling the interview. So once the interview is scheduled, then you want to make sure you're prepared for that final interview. So Daveg 1435, can adult children of U.S. citizens do an adjustment of status after having overstayed a visitor's visa? So adult children would have to be under 21 and unmarried, not married, to be able to do that. Otherwise, if they're over, so if they're 21 and over, they would not qualify for it. So that's a great question, and it's a question I get. It's a very common question, and I that is where a lot of applicants get into trouble, is that there's the misconception that once you have a relative that can sponsor you in the United States, that you're good, you can stay here and apply for the green card, and that's not necessarily the case. So once I'm gonna go back to the topic of which citizenship process. So once you get to the interview, how do you prepare for it? So you want to make sure that you're studying those questions. So right now the USCIS, the questions for the civics test, the USCIS has 100 possible questions that you could get. and you at the actual interview you'll get about 10, so you get 10. But if you get 6 right in a row, the officer will stop and you will pass the civics test. Now they have the app. They have an app to help you study for those 100 possible questions. But keep in mind, you would only get about between 6 to 10 questions. So if you get 6 right, it stops. But it keeps going until you get up to 6 questions right. Very important that you prepare for that. So while you're waiting for your interview, as soon as you file your application, get the app, the USCIS app with the civics test. You can also go to the uscis.gov website and look up the civics test, and they will give you online resources to study. This is not a multiple choice test. So user 9038, my husband petitioned for us. We are in the USA, got biometrics appointment, but no request for the affidavit. So if you haven't gotten it yet, you're probably going to get it. Make sure you have it prepared, because that's usually something that's required. Now, if they don't request it throughout the process and you are going to attend the interview, definitely have it ready for the interview, because it usually is required along with the rest of the forms. So once you get to the appointment, now it's interview date, you're ready and set, you studied your questions. What is that like? So you're gonna check in to the USCIS field office that where it says in your interview notice. When you go, you check in. They usually give you a number, assign you a number, and you sit in the waiting area and wait for the officer to call you. The officer will take you into his or her office and swear you in, so that you can tell the truth. You know that you're under oath. You must tell the truth. And then the officer usually goes through the questions in your application, touches on verifies certain questions to make sure that your your application is accurate, that there are no disqualifying issues going on in your application. So Princess Judith, hello. If I am not in Florida, can you work on my case? Would love to file for. Of course, I work with clients all over the country. So all you have to do is give my office a call. The link is in my bio. So you can go to the website and get my number there. You can also check out my videos. My number is all over my videos. So you can also complete a contact form on the website, and the scheduling coordinator will get back to you. So Katie the Stallion, what does it mean when they say your case is ready to be scheduled for an interview? So that means that they have received everything and you're in line for the interview. So that's good news. How long is the process of the I-601A? I've seen it as short as 6 months, but prepare for a 1.5 year long process. Katie the Stallion, how long does it take? So right now, because of the COVID situation, it's hard to tell. It just depends on where it's processing your case and their workload. But what you can do is check out the uscis.gov case processing link. It's on their homepage. And, pull up the office where your case is being processed. That's if it's in the US. And you can see a range of dates. Otherwise, you would have to check with the embassy. If it's being processed at an embassy, you'd have to check with them to see how long you should expect. They do, different embassies. If you go to the embassy in your home country, if it's an embassy that's going to process your case, they usually have email addresses, and you can email, follow the instructions and email them, and they will, give you some information about where your case is and how long you should expect. Hi there, Charming Rose. It's nice to see you. So keep those questions coming. I'm pretty much coming to at the end of my topic, which was applying for U.S. citizenship. But feel free, as I'm closing out, to drop your questions, and I will still go ahead and answer as long as I see those questions coming in. So once you are ready, you're ready to set, the officer calls you in. They'll verify your they will verify your information in the application. And then, all being well, the next thing you will end up doing is doing the civics test. So it's based on those 100 possible questions that I told you about. So you have to be prepared for them, and they are not multiple choice. So you have to go off of memory when you're answering those questions. Let's see. Okay, so you're welcome, Princess Judith and Sandra. I think Sandra 634. What is a waiver? So a waiver is usually in immigration, it's where you're asking either to be excused from a certain requirement, or you're asking for forgiveness for an past immigration violation. So there are different types of waivers, and it just depends on what your circumstances are, what's going on, and what you need to be. You either need waived or you need to be forgiven for. So once the officer will keep asking you questions, and if you get 6 of those questions right in a row, then the test stops. But if you get some right, some wrong, then they're going to continue asking you the questions, up to 10 questions, and you must get 6 out of the 10 questions right to pass the test. So Lorona, thank you, user 9038, for sharing the live. Lorona Samantha, how to bring siblings to the U.S. So Sandra, you're welcome. Now, if you are a U.S. citizen, then you can apply for your siblings to come to the U.S., but there is a little caveat there, and that's your it takes 14 years, at least 14 years, depending on where you're from, up to 22 years to apply for siblings. So it's not a quick solution, and if you have to apply for it, it's the last resort to get the green card. So, and you have to be fully invested. So Katie the Stallion, can they still send an RFE if after they said your case is ready for an interview? No, they can always do that. However, at that point, it may be unlikely. Keep in mind, though, that you could get an RFE even while you're at the interview. If the officer, that's why it's very important to be prepared and make sure that you provide all the evidence that is necessary, because you could be at the interview and the officer will ask you for a document, and if you don't have it, then you could be issued an RFE right there, and then that could lead to a delay in a decision. So, an RFE can come at any time. So Chocolate 3185, what if you got bad memory? So I'm glad you asked that. If you have bad memory, if that bad memory is related to a disability or a long-term illness, there is a waiver that's available for people who can prove it. Usually a physician, the person's physician, has to complete a special type of form saying that the patient or the applicant is unable to do the test because of their condition. But if you yourself, it's just a personal opinion that you have a bad memory, then that's not going to be enough to get that waiver. And I would just suggest that if you don't have a disability or an illness that's causing the bad memory, that you just give yourself more time to study and get it right. But unfortunately, just having a bad memory without it being connected to a disability or a condition or sickness would not be enough to get you out of taking the test. Blessed Chad Ali, thanks for sharing the live. Monat24, if my husband is filing for me, do I have to update my passport with my married name? Not necessarily. You don't have to change your name to continue with the green card process. It's usually something that you would want to do, but it's not required. Chocolate 3185, okay. Samantha Baptiste, thank you for sharing the live. So now keep in mind that once you pass, thanks Charming Rose for sharing my live. So once you have passed the test, then the officer will usually tell you if there are no issues that the officer has identified. The officer will usually tell you on the spot whether there's a problem. 161, thanks for sharing the live. And if the officer will usually indicate if there is something he or she has to review further, or whether they would recommend approval. Hopefully you would be recommended for approval, and the officer will just let you know that get ready. Now you'll sign the application after the officer has finally approved you, and then you will be told to expect the appointment, the notice for the swearing in the mail, and that would be great news. And then about roughly 4 weeks later, you will be able to attend your swearing in ceremony. So usually during the swearing in ceremony, you want to make sure you're on your P's and Q's, because between getting approved at the interview, passing the interview, and the swearing in, if anything changes, it could compromise the citizenship still. So if you travel, if you have to report whether you travel, whether you've been arrested, all of that, you would still have to report any changes at the swearing in ceremony. So you want to make sure that you're careful during that time period as well. But once you're there, then it's usually a beautiful ceremony, and you will walk out with your naturalization certificate, which is proof of your U.S. citizenship, and you will be a new United States citizen. So that, in a nutshell, is the U.S. citizenship process. That is one of my favorite things to do, because it just is the epitome of at the end of a journey, but at the same time the beginning of another journey in the United States. So that is one of my favorite things to do. If you need any assistance, any advice, you can give me a call to schedule a consultation. I'm here every night, and I'm trying to make appearances multiple times in the days to keep up with you all. So just what you can do is follow me, and once you'll get notice that I'm going live, and you can hop on and ask your questions. So how long does an I-130 filing normally take to be approved? So I would say expect an 8-month to 12-month process, Monat 24. So I'm here every night. Follow me so that you can see when I go live and come on and ask your questions. Your questions are my priority when I'm on here. So it's a good time, especially if you have a nagging immigration question that's keeping you up. Then this would be a good place to come and get some answers. So how long does it take for your parent to come to the USA? So Princess Judith, you're welcome, Monat 24. So Princess Judith and Monat 24, one thing I want to tell you is you can go to the uscis.gov website, and you can go to the field office that is processing, or the service center that's currently processing the I-130, and they can give you a more accurate time range of how long it's going to take to process, how long they take. So they'll give you a range of time, and that will also give you a better idea, because it changes, and sometimes what I may say may be something old and it's something new, and so they will have the more up-to-date information. So Princess Judith, how long does it take for your parent to come to the USA? It depends on, now if you have to be a US citizen to sponsor your parent, and I would say it could take a 12-month to a 2-year process. It just all depends on the particular circumstances involved. You're welcome, Manat24. So I'm going to close out. Thank you all for your great questions, and I'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, check out the link in my bio, check out my videos where you can get, short snippets of information, and then you can always follow me and wait for me to go live so that you can ask your general immigration questions. Okay, so Princess Judith, yes. So as long as you're a U.S. citizen, you can apply for your parents, and then that process ranges. But I would say you can prepare for a process as long as 2 years, maybe as short as a year. All right, have a good night, everyone. See you tomorrow.